Good evening. Sorry. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. This is the Puyallup City Council meeting for June 10th. It is called to order. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. With that, Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Adler?
Present.
Councilmember Dorr?
Present.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Present.
Councilmember Johnson?
Present.
Councilmember Whitting?
Present.
Deputy Mayor King?
Present.
Mayor Castema?
Present. At this time, I usually scan the audience and I look for youth, children who are in our grade school, junior high, or high school, and then I have them stand up, kind of announce who they are, maybe give us an idea of why they're here. But I do not see anyone in that category. If I could be wrong, would you please go ahead and recognize yourself? And we do that because we want to encourage the youth to show up at our meetings, and of course we want to be representative of individuals and leaders that they would someday want to be themselves. They are the futures of this community. Now with that, we are going to move to item 1 on the agenda, approval of the agenda, with the exception that I will add that we will go into an executive session shortly to discuss with city attorneys matters relating to agency enforcement actions. And we will do that right before citizen comments. So with that addition, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the agenda with the addition of an executive session after the consideration of minutes on the agenda.
Excellent.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. We will move on to number 2, consideration of minutes. 2A is approval of the May 20th, 2025 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. We will now go into that executive session for approximately 15 minutes. Everybody can go ahead and stay here. We will be back out to continue the agenda. With that, we'll go into executive session. We will now resume the meeting of the Puyallup City Council for June 10th. It is now called to order once more. The next item on the agenda is citizen comments. Keep in mind that every individual has the opportunity to come forward and speak for 3 minutes. We would ask that the person fill out one of these forms right here. It's important that we not only know your name, but what district or your address, and also some contact information. So in case we do have to get back with you personally, we can go ahead and make that happen. Also, it's important to know that many people who come here believe that they actually live in the city of Puyallup because they have a Puyallup address, but in reality, they're in unincorporated Pierce County, and it's just effective as to where you get the best representation of whether you should be at the county council or here. You're always welcome here, but I'm just saying for effective representation, it's often wise for you to go to the governance body that governs over you. Having said that, I will have Dan Vessels, our city clerk, outline the guidelines for citizen comments. Dan, please.
This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Thank you. Now, when you get to your 3 minutes, and by no means do I want to be rude, but I do have to cut everyone off at 3 minutes. Important that I treat everyone exactly the same. And feel free that during these comments, if you want to go ahead and fill one of these out and head it to the city clerk, you can go ahead and do so. That is completely acceptable. With that, the first person we have is Joe Colombo. Please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. My name is Joe Colombo. I live in District 2, right near Good Samaritan Hospital. I am requesting that you add the verbiage relating to climate change back into the comprehensive plan. As you may have noticed today, there's a lot of smoke in the air. Right now, there's currently large swaths of Alberta, Canada that are currently on fire. These wildfires are being made more severe due to ignoring human-caused climate change. We currently have what is unofficially called fire season here in Washington now. It didn't used to exist when I was a child. I remember in 2020 when the air was so thick with wildfire smoke, and it was like that for days. The sun was orange. It burned my eyes. You could taste the soot that was in the air. We were told to not go outside unless it was absolutely necessary. I also remember seeing flames when I was driving downtown that were engulfed on Highway 410. It was the first time in my life I ever had to put together an emergency go bag so that I could evacuate my daughter and my cat if the fire spread to downtown Puyallup. We really need to be focusing on how to make our new buildings resistant to climate change and how we can reduce climate pollution. There's actually a new series being aired today or this week that discusses how housing can be a big source of pollution, from building materials that use lots of planet heating fossil fuels to energy intensive heating and cooling for buildings. So we must make new homes sustainable with housing climate solutions. So if we want to preserve this city for our children, our grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, it just seems like common sense that you add the verbiage that relates to climate change back into the comp plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colombo. Okay, the next person is John Hopkins.
John Hopkins, District 1. Regarding your comp plan, figuring out a few timelines here or times. You have in Washington, D.C. very short periods of time. You know, it's like a revolving door there. Things change all the time. But when it comes to Olympia, it's a little bit different. They lean to the left, and they're going to stay that way for a long time. And for the last 4 years, affordable housing have been passed. Every year it gets passed. They're serious about it. They're not going to get repealed, because to repeal anything there is an incredibly complicated thing to do. So, I know you don't like a lot of the things, so what are you going to do about it? You know, if you want to carve out stuff, what can you reasonably carve out? I think you could justify flood zones because they happen within the span or the lifespan of a house, which is, shall we say, 100 years. That could be done. That would be justifiable. I think you could consider seismic activity, maybe liquefaction zones, but I don't see that really passing muster either, because that's the whole state, isn't it? Now, those happen within the lifespan of a house, you know, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. But to think about lahars, I really question that one, because if you look at lahars, how often they are, looking it up, 500 years was the smallest timeline that I saw, 5,000 more normal. So you're looking at a time of, shall we say, 1,000 years, just kind of doing an average. So each and every dwelling is going to get torn down and replaced, torn down and replaced, torn down and replaced. That will happen regularly. So how on earth do you justify using lahars as an escape clause from having to do what Olympia says? I don't buy it. I don't think it's a reasonable thing to do in the least. And at the same time, you're putting in apartments. That doesn't really work. So I'm not getting it. That's just my take on it. I don't think the powers that be who review it are going to say that makes any sense at all. I mean, they'll treat that as an excuse, like Kerry Yenisek having to wash his hair to turn down a date. You know, can't use that as an excuse. Anyway, I missed that one.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Next is Kathleen McLeod. Kathleen, I hope I have your last name correct.
You did.
Okay, excellent.
All the Scots in the world are proud of you. I am in, I believe, District 3. Yeah, okay. And I'm here to talk about a couple things. Most importantly, leading up to DEI, just some comments. But I'm going to start with EOA, commonly known as the Equal Opportunity Act, which passed in the mid to late 60s and enabled me to pay my way through college, because it said that any woman, if she had the qualifications, could apply for any job. It took a law to allow that to happen, and that wasn't that long ago. It enabled me to apply for a job at the post office, and I scored highest on the test, so they had to call me and offer me a job. And what they offered me, ironically, was a job as a male man. And so it was. I was one of the first 10 females to deliver mail in the city of Seattle. We have changed so many titles to accommodate that, but along the way, to freedom and justice for all, fairness for all. Next thing that happened 4 years after that was a thing called Title IX that said girls got to play sports. And funding for that had to come from the same funds that was funding for the boys. And I was teaching at that time, and I had been on the University of Washington's first ever women's track team. I'd also been on the gymnastics team for 4 years, because somebody said to me, you'd be good at gymnastics, because I hadn't been in any sports. There weren't any for me. And so it was when I graduated. I got all kinds of job offers because I could coach. And when I did, I had to coach everything. So by the time I coached volleyball and then coached gymnastics, then came track. Well, there's only one track, and so the boys and the girls were going to have to do it together. And I was so lucky that the man who was the track coach said to me, let's do it together. So he took half the events, I took the other half. He got to pick first, of course, but that was okay. And we won every single meet. And what was really great about it is the way both the boys and the girls celebrated each other. Because that's what it was all about, because they understood if we help each other, then we will have a much better
30
time.
seconds.
And with DEI, diversity, inclusion, and equality, we have to have a law that allows that. And the only thing that would stop it is chaos and confusion caused by messing with it. And mostly it gets messed because of either hate or frustration or something that says, I'm not going to do the right thing because this is in the way and I'm going to let it happen. Please don't. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Next is Heather Schiller.
Sorry, I'm at the age I'm not sure if I need 2 sets of glasses or one, so let me see what I'm going to do here. So, good evening, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Heather Schiller, and I live in District 2. I'm here to share my thoughts on items 4A and 4B on the agenda. I previously served as chair of the Planning Commission when these items were reviewed and recommended to Council. I want to emphasize that my remarks tonight are my personal views and not those of the Planning Commission, as I'm no longer a member. Regarding item 4A, the second reading of the Good Samaritan Hospital Master Plan, I strongly support its adoption. Good Samaritan is a cornerstone of our community, and its planned expansion will be instrumental in providing critical healthcare services while creating new jobs in Puyallup. Turning to item 4B, the first reading of the Puyallup 2044 Comprehensive Plan Update. While I generally support the joint amendments proposed by 2 council members, I'm deeply concerned about the additional amendments under consideration. During prior council discussions about this plan, the importance of getting this plan right was repeatedly emphasized. This document will shape our city's future for the next 2 decades. It's imperative that the language we adopt reflects our commitment to all citizens of our community. One significant concern I have is the replacement of the term equity with equality throughout the document. These terms are not interchangeable. The Senior Center provides equitable access to our seniors in Puyallup, but those under 55 don't have equal use. This revision appears to contradict Vision 2050 as outlined by the Puget Sound Regional Council and may put us at odds with state requirements and laws. If our comprehensive plan does not align with state regulations, we risk losing essential funding for critical services. Additionally, I'm troubled by the amendments in the foundations section that alter historically accurate references to the Puyallup tribe, its history on this land, and the origins of our city. Revising historical narratives to make them more comfortable is a dangerous precedent that risks damaging our relationship with the tribe. In council meetings past, I have heard residents express concerns that they considered not moving to Puyallup because of its reputation. I have personally spoken with individuals who share these apprehensions. The perception that Puyallup is not an inclusive community is an unfortunate reality for many. The proposed amendments only reinforce this perception. I urge the council to think about the inclusive future that our community has been working towards and to reconsider the first reading with the proposed amendments. The decisions we make today will define our city for years to come. Let us ensure we move forward with a vision that embraces and uplifts all members of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Nancy Shattuck.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. My name is Nancy Shattuck, and I live in District 1. I am here to comment on the first reading of the ordinance to adopt the Puyallup 2044 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update. I've called Puyallup home for the past 4 years, but my family's roots here run deep. My great-grandmother had a farm here in the valley. My mom graduated from Puyallup High School, as did my daughter. I served this city for 12 years as your victim advocate in the city attorney's office, and I truly care about the city of Puyallup. I attended the community workshop in September 2023 at Pierce College, where we were told that equity, inclusion, and the community voice would be centered in the comprehensive plan update. But that promise is not reflected in the amendments that are being proposed. Instead, what I see is a document that not only fails to meet the requirement of state law, including the mandate to incorporate equity into our Planning under Growth Management Act, but one that actively retreats from those responsibilities. Equity does not mean treating everyone the same. It means recognizing that historical, systemic, and institutional barriers have made access to opportunity profoundly unequal, especially for communities of color, low-income residents, renters, immigrants, and disabled people. Equity is about repair. It is about removing those barriers and redistributing power and resources so everyone has a real shot at safety, housing, and belonging. These amendments erase key protections and undermine goals to preserve affordability, cultural heritage, and meaningful engagement. They remove analysis of climate change, weaken displacement protections, and offer incentives for development without any guardrails to ensure that our most vulnerable neighbors can stay in their homes. They push people out. They ignore the housing equity analysis that your own plan references, and they prioritize expedience over justice. As a member of a bilingual and bicultural family, my husband is from Ecuador, I can tell you plainly that we do not feel represented in this vision. My family doesn't see our needs, our culture, or our contributions reflected in these amendments. What we do see is a plan that caters to profit and erasure. Puyallup deserves better. My children deserve better. These amendments are gross. They are discriminatory, and they violate both the spirit and the letter of what we claim to stand for here in Puyallup.
30 seconds.
Especially on land that once belonged to the Puyallup tribe and who are still very much so here. You have a choice tonight, and I really believe that you need to think about your own privilege and your own access and the fact that you represent the residents of Puyallup, not just people who look like you, but everyone in this room and those who aren't here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Bud Metzger.
Good evening, Bud Metzger, District 3. Boy, a lot to talk about. First of all, the city needs to prepare for the eventual fire that's going to happen in the city, and we need to be proactive in creating a system that can subdue fires before they gain speed. As an example, there's a water line that goes under the west access road to Pierce College that could easily have hydrants attached to it. We should advocate for that. If that caught on fire, what's the closest Puyallup building that will be close to that? Our fire department and our police department headquarters. Hello. Secondly, when it comes to the comprehensive plan, I see you guys adding things little bits at a time and actually in doing so confuse yourself with your own dialogue, which happened at the last meeting. I don't think that's the way to go about creating a comprehensive plan. I don't see any reports regarding lahars and when they come, how often they come, how deep they are. In the past, when we had our past comprehensive plan, the hospital's power source is the lowest portion of their property, and it's in a certain year of lahar area. Did you know that? Probably not, because they just let the hospital do it. It may be something to consider. Has it been addressed? You know, in respect to, talking to people in the community and making it a community, it's the only way we're going to survive. If we don't, we won't have the power to do what's needed in the city to make it and be a success. You know, it's easy to sell a piece of property for $1 to a developer, but what does that tell the public when you want to raise their taxes on other things? You have to understand that most people don't understand the city as well as you may or I may, but when people see you selling a property for that amount of money, it makes them uncertain to
30
believe in
seconds.
what you're doing. So I just think there needs to be a little bit more outreach to the people so that you can partner with them a little bit more. It'll make our government better. Thank you.
Thank you, Bud. Next individual, and Trish, I hope I get your last name correct, but Trish Siltala.
Siltala.
Pardon me?
Siltala.
Siltala.
Yeah. My husband wanted to move here because he wanted people to have to say Mark Siltala from Puyallup.
Sounds Finnish.
But we actually live in the county, but we live in the Ridgecrest attendance area, so we're close in. My faith community is in downtown Puyallup, and I worked here as a speech therapist in the schools for close to 20 years. Just retired a few years ago. I have a list of the amendments that was made available to me. I just had a few comments. I think one of the things that I think Puyallup is really proud of is the name of the city means land of generous people. Is that correct? It's in the city paperwork, letterhead, yeah? I think, and I'm sorry to say this, if especially the equity portion is taken out, I would recommend taking that off the paperwork. That is not correct. This is not inequity. Inequality and inequity are different things. And the crime in it is taking the name that was given to it by the natives and just ignoring the natives and declining services. It's not right, okay? Another thing that I wanted to support is keeping ecological, what's the word? I get nervous sometimes. The climate change. Keep the climate change as it is. I took a science class for non-majors called Human Ecology in 1976, and we learned about the trajectory of climate change. And in 2025, we will have passed these markers for no turning back. And we expected to lose polar bears by this year too. We were lucky, but these things are still going on exactly as predicted in 1976. And if you don't know that, college-educated friends, I don't know what you're doing. Do what we can. We need to do what we can as individuals, as communities, as a country. We should be doing
Mayor,
what we
speakers
can.
reached 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Trish. Chris Chisholm.
Hey, Council, thank you. Chris Chisholm, District 2. Just want to point out a couple of facts. These are facts, straight off of the county website. Election results this past November. Kamala Harris, 51.5% in the city of Puyallup. Trump, 44.7%. Kamala beat Trump in the city of Puyallup by 7%. In all districts, all 3 districts. That's really important to remember when you're wanting to propose to put into the comp plan these follow the executive orders, follow a dictator, a wannabe dictator in our comp plan. That's an embarrassment, and it reflects not the will of this people, the people of Puyallup. The comp plan is perfectly fine as passed through Planning Commission. It's a compromise plan that all of us can live with. It's fine as is. You don't need to make any amendments to it. It's been vetted by professionals that you hired in the planning department, by Planning Commission. Of course, you ousted the chair in order to, because you didn't like what you saw. But it's a perfectly good plan. Doesn't need to have any amendments. Not only are those amendments unnecessary and set us up for rejection of this comp plan and lawsuits, but they're embarrassing. You're embarrassing us again if you pass these. Just like in the 1870s when we kicked the tribe out of the fairgrounds, their potlatch grounds, and said you can't be in this area anymore. 1890s when the people, the Asians, Chinese workers who dug the river were kicked out of town. The 1920s, when the KKK, whose leaders were living right here in Puyallup, kicked the black people out of town. Just like in the 1940s, when we interned Japanese Americans at the fairgrounds, and on and on. This is another potential embarrassment that you can avoid by rejecting these amendments. It sounds like the intro was perfectly fine as is, and then you added these two horrible long paragraphs
30 seconds.
That are based on political ideology. Unnecessary. It sounds like some Dixiecrat wrote that. That just wants us to come back to reluctantly 1964 at the max. Martin Luther King Jr. would be rolling over his grave because he said for years until he died, that was nowhere near enough. Don't do this. The plan is fine as is. Especially don't rewrite Puyallup tribal history in your own way, the way you want to remember it. Collaborate with the tribe.
Mayor, speakers reach 30 minutes.
Collaborate with them. And
Thank you,
that.
Chris. At this point, I would like to open the microphone up to other individuals who would like to come forward. Please state your name and where you are from, your address, so that we can determine, or you may tell us your district.
John Chuntafalski, 1519 7th Street Southwest, Puyallup, Washington. Later this evening, my physical residence will be the city jail. I no longer wish to live free while others are being persecuted in this city. If I make any erroneous, disrespectful remarks, your solicitor sits right there. I fear death. No, I do not fear jail. What I fear is people not being treated when a proclamation is issued by the governing body of Puyallup to treat all fairly, and it's an outright lie. Your solicitor is there. As far as I've made comments in the past as to all I get was stares, I've been corrected today. It's now my understanding you are not allowed to make any comments unless it's on the agenda. I accept that. I've also been to several council meetings where a yellow form is filled out, and at the conclusion of the citizens' comments, the mayor would suggest that we have your knowledge, we have your information if we need to get back with you. Had anyone ever told me this is a process and actually contacted me and corrected my mistakes, I wouldn't have had to criticize Puyallup's Magnificent Seven. Now I will end my statement, go to the hall, and call for a ride. Thank you. Chief, there will be no violence.
Thank you, John. Now, is there anyone else who would like to come forward? Please state your name and your district.
David DeGroat, District 3. Mr. Mayor, council members, my 12-year-old grandson's hockey team finished its season in April. At that age, some kids are a head taller than others, bigger, stronger. Some kids' parents could afford to get them private coaching. Others' parents had to stretch just to get their necessary equipment. Some kids had two parents who attended every game. Some had one parent who couldn't always be there. A couple of the players were girls, a couple were ethnic minorities, but when they got on the ice, everyone played by the same rules. No one was awarded a goal or assist based on their sex or ethnicity. No one wore a special jersey based on where their grandparents came from. They were one team who supported and cheered each other on, and at the end of the game, win or lose, they fist bumped their opponents. Why is it we teach equality, fair play, and goodwill to our children and then abandon those same principles as adults? Why do we insist on dividing our society by race, ethnicity, or gender into so-called communities or populations that are identified as perpetual victims regardless of individual circumstances, and by default identify others as victimizers regardless of their personal actions? Why do we so strongly defend equal rights for those who have come to our shores in recent decades by whatever means, but then say of two people, both born here, both the same age, that one deserves a suite of special rights and privileges based on the fact that the ancestors of the one arrived here before the ancestors of the other? Equity for low-income individuals related to food, health care, education, employment, housing, and other needs is provided through government financial assistance programs. Importantly, these programs are, one, based on individual need, and two, equally open to all. Equity, as used in Vision 2050 and inserted into our draft comprehensive plan, is primarily focused on issues of race and cultural history, rather than equal access for all, and is therefore neither equal nor inclusive. Identity politics is a more serious threat to our nation than any external force. Equity policies that favor certain racial or ethnic communities or populations is a recipe for eternal conflict. Equality and acceptance of all, without caveat, is the only real path to peace. Thank you.
Thank you, David. With that, does anyone else wish to come forward? Ma'am, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Chrissy Hibbler, and I'm in District 2. And I just wanted to say that the amendments to the City of Puyallup's Comprehensive Plan for 2044 are troubling because they do have consistent themes of watering down of DEI principles and climate action verbiage. I do oppose removal of key phrases and changes to certain sections, such as replacing historically marginalized communities and instead referencing race, ethnicity, or other protected classes. They are historically marginalized. I don't know why that needs to be changed. And another example was end of a phrase said, especially under the lens of climate change and equity, and the new phrasing is including best practices for climate change adaptation. And I just, like others have said, I believe equity is a very important term, and having equity replaced with equality in certain sections is not equivalent. And the overall changes that I saw in the amendments are really concerning. They do seem to send us backwards and against our core values of intentional inclusion, recognition of marginalized and founding citizens of our city, and we need equity more than equality. Please reject the amendments.
Thank you. Okay, are there any further comments? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is where we have a number of items that we list that there is an agreement with, consensus that we are in agreement with, and then we make one vote to vote on all of those. But having said that, and by the way, we will be discussing this bill. I would not, it's not that far off the agenda. But having said that, is there any consent item that you would like to have eliminated and or else moved to another portion of the agenda? And I'm making this motion to my members. Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, excellent. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to number 4, ordinances. Second reading of an ordinance adopting Good Samaritan Hospital Master Plan. Chris Beal, could you please come forward to provide information background?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Chris Beal. I'm with the Senior Planner with the City's Planning Division. Tonight is the second reading of the ordinance for Good Sam's Master Plan. Council conducted first reading in late May. There's been really no changes to the proposed master plan since then. So the expectation is Council would make a vote and pass on second reading.
Councilmember Johnson, you have a question?
I was just going to respond when that presentation is completed.
Oh, go ahead. I believe it is.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and propose that we make a motion to pass the second reading of item 4A, which is the second reading of an ordinance adopting the Good Samaritan Hospital Master Plan Ordinance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak to that just kind of loosely.
Certainly.
Thank you. It's a little bit of a digression, but really not so much. There were some comments tonight that mentioned the value that the Good Samaritan Hospital brings to our city and to those that visit our city, not just for the jobs, which certainly they do, but really for the service that they provide, which is help to those who are in need. Fortunately, in a recent recommendation by one of my doctors, they said you should probably check into the emergency room a few weeks ago. Just because I'm getting to the age now where they want to check certain things out. It's one of the joys of the maturing process. And so I took that advice and checked myself into Good Samaritan Hospital upon the wise counsel. But the reason why I tell you that is not so much to focus on myself, but to focus on what I experienced there and the value that I saw firsthand recently. Their staff from the very get-go was extremely efficient and welcoming. When I came in the door, the crew at the beginning already had my information ready to go, took me back within like 60 seconds, triaged me, began to assess what's going on, and I was in and out of there in a very quick period of time, all with the ultimate of care, compassion, and not the presupposition that sometimes you maybe have in years or decades past what an emergency room environment is like. So although I always appreciated them firsthand, I had a deeper appreciation for the service they provide, not only, again, for jobs and for those things, but for the customer service that's provided along with the medical service. Because how many of you know you can have great medical service, but sometimes the customer service, can be a little bit, bland. But there was heart behind the expertise, and I experienced it, felt it, and I was grateful that we have this right in our hometown. So congratulations to the Good Samaritan Hospital. And so I wholeheartedly, with a little bit of diversion, wanted to speak to the value of that firsthand as of recently, and know that I'm not the only one that will experience that, but many thousands of others will experience that in the days and years ahead, should they find themselves in need of care. So thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for indulging.
Okay, with that, do I have a motion to approve on second reading?
I already gave the motion.
Okay, sorry. Then we'll go to a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, there'll be a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Adler?
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King.
Aye.
Mayor Castema.
Aye. We will now move on to 4B, first reading of an ordinance adopting Puyallup 2044 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update. Senior Planner Kendall Walls, would you please come forward and be available to answer any questions? As the mayor, I would ask that we approach this very large, approximately 200-plus page bill in the following manner: that we make a motion to put forward the amended bill as instructed in the last meeting that we had, where we actually dealt with this particular piece of bill, this piece of this ordinance, and that we put that forward, and then from that we go ahead and we put on the amendments. And the amendments thus far are a group of amendments by myself and Councilmember Whitting, myself, staff, and then I believe we have one additional amendment that came in today. So with that, do I have a motion to put the comprehensive plan as amended before us for amendment purposes and for first reading?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, excellent. Now we're going to go ahead and entertain the amendments. Staff, could you please come forward, because there are a group of amendments that both Councilmember Whitting and I have worked on very closely. Could you go ahead and itemize those?
Yes, we'll bring them up on screen. So first, could you please go to the joint amendments first? So on screen here is the consolidated amendments between that are jointly proposed by Mayor Castema and Councilmember Whitting. There are proposed amendments to the natural environment element, the land use element, the housing and community character elements, and I believe also the transportation element. Would you like that zoomed in a little bit to scroll through, or do you need further information on that?
Councilmember Whitting.
I just wanted to speak. We've had some public comments about the deletion in item 11.6 of the. You want to go back up, Kendall? Thank
Previous
you.
screen.
Number 3 there, remove policy NE 11.6 includes analysis of climate change impacts when conducting environmental review under the State Environmental Policy Act. And while I am very concerned about the climate and environmental issues, if you actually read the comprehensive plan, there are very robust protections, and if in referring to those sections, that we are protecting the environment. That is our intent. It is our intent to protect the environment. It's my personal intent to protect the environment. This particular item relates to housing, and we also need affordable housing, and we need it quickly and cheaply. And subjecting developers to go through a SEPA process that includes climate change issues on individual housing, I thought was a little bit over the top. I don't think individual homes necessarily have a big impact on climate change. I know everything has an impact on climate change, but if a developer brings forward a all-electric home, should he have to go through an extended SEPA climate review for that house? And I think we need the housing, getting housing and affordable housing is important, and I felt that like this provision did little to protect our climate, but did a lot to increase the cost and affordability of our housing. So that was the reason I introduced this amendment, and I don't pretend to be fully knowledgeable about anything, and I understand that there can be differences of opinion on this issue, but that's my honest effort to balance the needs of climate and affordable housing both. So thank you.
Councilmember Whitting, I would suggest that you move adoption of the amendments.
I will move adoption of the amendment of the comprehensive plan proposed amendments by Mayor Castma and Councilmember Whitting.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, I'd like to comment to Councilmember Whitting's explanation. One of the limitations that we have as council members is that we can't huddle in backroom meetings and have discussions on these issues and get it all pre-cooked before it comes out. So we're limited on who we can talk to and how many people we can talk to legally and ethically. And tonight I want to thank Councilor Whitting for publicly disclosing kind of your thought on that. It certainly endeared me to understand that you thought that through, and you're climate conscious, but also you're people conscious to, if we're looking for affordable housing, to apply this standard on the housing portion of it would certainly increase the cost of houses in the price of doing business. So I do appreciate that public comment, Councilor Whitting. I'm happy to support your approach on this while keeping in mind the holistic concept of climate change, but also recognizing when it comes to common folks trying to find affordable housing for all, this is an important financial component that's important to keep costs down. Thank you for that.
Okay, with that, is there any further discussion? Okay, we're going to vote on this amendment. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? I believe it is unanimous. We'll now move on to the next set of amendments.
All right, so if you could go to the website, please. Next, we'll look at the mayor's amendments, which touch on 10 of the 13 elements which are provided on the project webpage here. We wanted to highlight 4 amendments in particular because they are separate from the motion that was passed at the March 11th meeting, and that's what we'll show next. So if you could go to the map amendments. There's 2 map amendments proposed, one related to the neighborhood commercial that's proposed near Maplewood Elementary School, and modifying that area so that neighborhood commercial is only applied at the corner and moderate density residential is applied to the remaining area that was already proposed for amendment. The other is along the South Meridian corridor, and is to convert the area that was remaining as high-density residential to all go to mixed-use commercial for that South Meridian corridor. The other are 2 text amendments, and those are incorporated into those documents that were linked on the webpage. So first, looking at the natural environment element. I don't know if I'm able to switch it. There are proposed changes to the geologically hazardous areas text, and new information added related to volcanic lahar and inundation areas. There's also proposed amendments to the housing element, or one area of additional, and that has to do with the language that staff had included in one of our staff alternatives related to work that would be done in the future to address our housing needs to accommodate emergency housing. So just being less specific and allowing for us to go through that process and consider all of those options in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Whitting.
Kendall, just a quick question. You mentioned an amendment that came in today. Is that my amendment?
I believe it is. I don't have.
The subject matter is
There's a study.
Related to a volcanic hazard area study, I believe. I don't have that available to put on screen at the moment.
We will. The plan is to address that amendment, Councilmember Whitting.
Yes, so I won't address that at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that, do I have a motion to approve this?
Actually, I do have some comments. Sorry.
Okay. However, let's put it on the table first. I move adoption of these amendments, all four. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, excellent. Now we're in discussion. Councilmember Whitting.
Clearly, we've had a lot of discussion about the use of equity versus equality, and we've heard some discussion about Puyallup being a land of generous people, and I think that's what we want. I think we want to have a community where people feel welcome, that people are treated fairly, and I think our city staff does a pretty good job of trying to honor that history and background. We're not perfect, but I think we work pretty hard, and I personally don't think that the verbiage change between equity and equality is going to affect much about how we go about doing our business in Puyallup. On the other hand, the equity versus equality has become a national issue. The stand of the federal government is going one direction, and the state government is going another direction. I personally feel that the state is going to have more impact on Puyallup than the feds will, and I may be all wet on that, but my hope is that the state will continue to be more influential here than the federal government is. So I'm a little bit of a pragmatist here, and I think that we open ourselves up for negative consequences if we don't follow the language that's specified in the Vision 2040 and the Growth Management Act. So I think that the changes in language about changing equity to equality is probably not in the best interest of Puyallup, so I would advocate that we not advance those changes. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitting, be aware that we're talking about the amendment, not the underlying ordinance. That is already on the table. That will be discussed in final passage. We are talking at this point strictly about the amendment with these four components. It does not include the underlying ordinance, which already has been adopted per the council directions, which has already been modified, per the council instructions. So if you could keep your comments strictly to those at this point, we will dispel of it, and then we will move on to the next amendment, and then I believe your amendment on Lahar's is coming up, and then we will have what is called final passage. And at that point, the remarks you just made, I think, would be very much appropriate. Councilmember Dorr, are you talking specifically about this amendment?
So I'm going to make my comments once. I am not supporting any of these amendments. I find them highly objectionable. I don't view this as a transparent process. When I had a call from a council member today that could not find these amendments on the agenda, a former council member, let me state that. It is not on the agenda. If I went to the Pierce County Council or some other board, I would look at an agenda and say, oh, this is not the thing I'm interested in. When So we have some people that have obviously found this information, but it is not easily accessible. It lacks transparency, and that is very concerning to me when a former planning commissioner and a former council member couldn't find this amendment. So that is my first reason for rejecting all of this. Second, these are not amendments. This is a comp plan rewrite. We had an open, transparent, very extensive, thorough process. This has not had the same opportunity, and I just can't support it. I wholeheartedly reject the intent of this, and it makes me really sad that this is where we are today. I cannot stand behind any of this. We stood up here last week and we had our LGBTQ proclamation. Members of this dais stood up here and accepted a Women's Day proclamation. So we are choosing to acknowledge groups that we want to acknowledge, that we are a part of. I find it very objectionable that now we're saying that other groups do not matter. And thirdly, I will not support any of this because this afternoon, approximately 4.5 hours before this meeting, we received a third-party legal opinion that is extensive. We've not had any opportunity to engage with counsel. I am not an attorney, and 37 pages of legal documents are not something I am going to try to process today on the dais. I find it completely, I find it very risky. I find that, as my colleague Councilmember Whitting said, if you want to look at where our city resources are, how we get our funding, this council funded a grant coordinator. We are looking for opportunities to buttress our budget. Not passing this comp plan amendment has serious repercussions to our taxpayers, to our community, and I am not going to jeopardize that. If you want to, at one point, members of this council said we should not bring national politics into the local level. And that is exactly what we're doing with these amendments, and I can't support it. If you look at our funding from the state versus the federal government, there's no comparison. I do not know how this is a good, responsible decision for our taxpayers to risk those dollars. And so I'm going to vote no for every one of these. At this point, I actually would move that we go into an executive session to seek legal advice from the city attorney.
Second.
I will go ahead and allow us to go ahead and do so. I do want to say, however, the remarks that were just made are what we would call on the underlying ordinance and not the specific amendment. I understand, I respect what has taken place, and it is up to the discretion of the mayor to allow people time to discuss with attorney confidentially, and it's my discretion that I will allow that, but I would ask the audience to maintain where you're at because we do plan on coming back. But I believe it is a courtesy. It should be allowed members on this council that if they have legal issues that they feel they need some guidance on, that they can do so. So with that, we will go into executive session, and I expect this to last 15 minutes. So with that, please go ahead and stay present, and we will go into executive session. Thank you. Puyallup City Council meeting for June 10th is called back to order. We have an amendment before us that has basically 4 components. One is the expansion, or excuse me, the modification of the Meeker zone, which is on Pioneer Avenue, and we saw a map of that. The second one is to allow Meridian to go ahead and have mixed use, so it'll allow housing and business along the corridor going up the hill. Third is to leave to code to determine the methodology of determining emergency housing, how that would be done. And then fourth is a amendment dealing with the Lahar. Councilmember Johnson, you want to speak to this amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I just wanted to get caught up on which one. We're working on one at a time. Which one are we on now, so we can kind of focus?
This is the amendment that are my amendments,
okay.
My 4. We just went ahead and passed Councilmember Whitting, Councilmember Castam amendments.
Right.
This is the 4 that I have put forward. And with that, I will go ahead and explain the rationale behind them. Number 1, if one goes on Pioneer in front of Meeker Elementary School, the commercial zone that was initially proposed is quite large. And I think completely inappropriate for a neighborhood school to have a commercial zone that large within that area. It's primarily residential. We've just repaired that traffic light in there so that we could allow more efficient people to turn, but a lot of it was safety. And so what this amendment does, it scales that back down to, I think, a reasonable commercial level, but then does allow kind of a multi-family, more higher density around that. I believe that was more appropriate than putting commercial in the middle of a neighborhood. Number 2, there has been some discussion and request, I believe, by you, Councilmember Johnson, that going up Meridian, that area in there should have some flexibility. A lot of it's housing, but that is a commercial corridor too. This amendment just allows that degree of flexibility. There can still be housing, but there can be an office structure if they so choose to put it in that area. I think it'll be rather tight to accomplish that, but nevertheless, we make that amendment per request. Let's see, number 3, I think I already reviewed that. Emergency housing, make sure that we do that it's not a prescribed way of doing that. Number 4, dealing with the Lahar. I think there's really quite a misnomer about that in this community. The fact is there is a 15% chance that we will have a Lahar in the Puyallup Valley over the next 75 years. In our actual code, it says that it's analogous to a 100-year flood. This is a critical issue for the city of Puyallup. That's why we're the only community other than Ording that has Lahar sirens going throughout the entire valley. In fact, the city of Puyallup was listed on the cover of Popular Mechanics in January as one of the most hazardous areas in the United States that's been termed by chief geologists throughout the United States. This is something we have to pay attention to. So what this does say is that we have to figure out a strategy regarding that. Putting developments along main arterials, we've already done that with our developments in downtown. We want them on main arterials where evacuation is very easy. We also went ahead last council meeting, we placed a buffer of approximately half a mile from the base of the hill where we will allow more development with the idea that people have time to evacuate. If you look around the world at cities who have been exposed to similar circumstances like Puyallup, it's really quite dire. It can be extremely hazardous and the deaths can run in thousands. I, being a lifelong resident of Puyallup, believe that we need to pay attention to that, like previous councils did, but we seem to have lost our way in that regards. So with that, that's all this amendment. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After getting a recap on that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we adopt your amendments as stated before us.
Councilmember Johnson, there's already a motion made and seconded.
Okay, good. I couldn't recall after the executive session. I got to look, turn back around. I do want to speak to that. Mr. Mayor, I always appreciate the recap that you give. There's been times where you and I have disagreed on certain things, but I've always appreciated the dialogue that we've had to work together and try to find some common ground. You know I wasn't a big fan of the commercial businesses. I like to expand that, and your rationale makes sense. And it seems to be a good compromise without risking or unduly putting hardship on our city. I do think the one that really excites me of the ones that you've mentioned is the Meridian Corridor, to really open that up for a development to happen. I mean, that's kind of, if you think about it, it's the jugular vein between the South Hill and our downtown core, and to have that kind of opened up and able to be developed at high density for housing and or businesses for jobs seems to make sense. And so I'm a big supporter of that. And I think that everything you stated here, while we may disagree on a few things, overall, I think in the scope of the city's interest is well served. And so I'll be happy to support and vote for this and look forward to it passing.
Okay. With that, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, I believe we have 5-2 on that. Okay, with that, we will now go to staff amendments.
All right, so in Exhibit E in your packet is a table of the staff alternative amendments. They are amendments to the foundations element, natural environment, housing, and transportation elements, and also includes 2 amendments to the future land use map. There are a few areas where the changes that are being implemented through the March 11 amendment will change the text. So amendments number 2, 5, 6, and 10 were altered based on the underlying ordinance amendments. And I can speak further on those if I need to explain what those ones are.
You've reviewed these in the past. Are there questions, please?
Mr. Mayor, can I get clarity, just a recap on that, please?
Yes, go ahead one more time.
It was rather brief. I want to make sure I'm getting it all.
Would you like me to repeat?
Just quickly, yeah, the overview.
So items 2, 5, 6, and 10 in the table have conflicts with the changes that are being proposed as part of the March 11 amendment. So depending on which moves forward, there's different text based on essentially the mayor's other amendments for the comprehensive amendments to the comp plan that are on the website.
Right, but this is not the ordinance as amended. This is still an amendment to that, correct?
I believe so.
Yes, because we have yet to get to final passage. So it's just these amendments. So with that, by the way, so the public knows this, this is what we call first reading, okay? We will, after this passes, we will go to second reading, and that will happen in 1, 2, or 3 weeks, depending on when staff can go ahead and coordinate all the behind-the-scenes work necessary to incorporate all of these elements, but that will take place then. We do that in Puyallup. Some cities just have one vote and you're done. We have a vote, and then we have time for individuals like yourself, council members, to go ahead to ponder this more, come up with amendments, and then when we meet again, it's a whole new bill at that time as amended, and people are free to amend it. Or we can go ahead and pass it on second reading. Second reading always requires a voice vote. It's a very final vote that we make. So with that, keep in mind that what we are saying here, if there is some element that we may have to modify later, we can do that on a second reading. But with that, is her explanation adequate? I'd like to hear from members. If not, do I have a motion to adopt staff amendments?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes, I believe, unanimously. Now we're going to move on to, I believe, one more amendment, is a Whitting amendment dealing with lahars.
Would you like me to read the amendment into the record?
Sure, go ahead.
The amendment is to add an action item directing staff to conduct a study to assess the potential impacts of a volcanic lahar on the city, with a focus on infrastructure, economic repercussions, emergency response, community safety, and sustainable development of commercial and residential buildings within the designated volcanic hazard area. And I believe this would be to the land use element of the comprehensive plan.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Councilman Whitting, do you have a point to make?
Yeah, I'd just like to
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I don't think it was moved and seconded. Just wanted to make that clarity.
I apologize. A little confused there. Is there a motion to put this forward?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Okay, now, Councilman Whitting.
Yeah, as the mayor so eloquently expressed, the lahar zone is a serious concern. That my understanding is that we have lahars in the Puyallup Valley about every 250 years, and we're past the 250-year mark, so it could happen regardless of what the frequency is. It could happen any day. Obviously, Mayor Castema has lived here his whole life and hasn't seen a lahar, and I'm a relatively newcomer, but that doesn't say that because we haven't seen one that we won't see one. So I just feel a responsibility as a council member to try and take care of my constituents, and I don't think I can do that with the amount of information I currently have. So I am proposing this amendment to be sure that we conduct a study that evaluates the nature of the threat and how we can mitigate the threats. And just as an example of one of the possible things that we could do, we've got 21st Street that runs up the hill from Cascade Christian School that's blocked off at the top. If we were doing our emergency preparedness planning for a lahar, wouldn't it make sense to put a little motor on that gate and have it hooked into the lahar siren, so when the lahar siren goes off, the gate opens up and people can drive up that road and get out of the valley? There's things that we can do, that we can educate our citizenry on what to do. So I've got a number of different ideas, but I'm sure we could come up with a lot more. But it needs to be informed by data. It needs to be informed by an understanding of the threat. And I don't think we can do an adequate job for our citizenry without a study. So I'm putting that in there so that we're sure to get the job done and we don't forget about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak to that. Councilor Whitting, when you just initially mentioned this amendment to me, I think you kind of mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, whatever, but I was a little bit apprehensive. But I think now that I've had a chance to hear your thoughts on this, I actually think that at times that you're kind of the right man at the right place at the right time for our council in terms of a council member. You've always been a man of reason and intellect and a calmer head. And I appreciate that even in this amendment, it does weave together some points of perspective that are differing, even on this council, a few, not much, but a few, and even from what we've heard. But this seems to tie it together, and it makes sense, and it could be the very thing that we need, again, to work together as much as possible in a respectful dialogue. So thank you for bringing this up. I'll be supporting this. Appreciate that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. Nay.
Okay, there's a 5-2 decision. Okay, with that, we're now, are there any further amendments anyone would like to bring forward? Hearing none, we're going to move on to the final passage. Now is the appropriate time for you to go ahead and give your speech regarding, or your thoughts, excuse me, on your perspective on the underlying comprehensive plan that we are passing today as amended. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put that in the form of a motion.
It already is before us, Councilmember Johnson. We did that initially.
Yeah,
So,
do we already have a second as well?
yes, we do. That's why.
I thought we were just working on the amendment, so this is actually for the full package.
That's correct, with all of the amendments on it.
Okay. Is that, I just want to clarify with the clerk, is that correct? I want to make sure that we're procedurally correct on that. Do we have a first motion and a second for the full amendment on the record so it doesn't come back and bite us?
I believe at this point, Councilmember Johnson, all of the amendments have had motions, seconds, and votes, and we are now back to the original underlying motion, which is to adopt first reading, which had a original motion as well as a second.
Okay. Do we know, again, just for the record, I want to make sure procedurally, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay?
It's fine.
Do we know who made the motion, who made the second, so we can make sure that it's documented?
Well, we'll just ask the city clerk who did that, but I am very positive I would not have put it forward.
I just want to make sure, again, procedurally, Mr. Mayor, to protect the process.
It's okay. It's fine. City clerk, who made that motion?
I have that the original motion was moved by Councilmember Johnson, and my notes were that Councilmember Gilliam had the second.
Okay.
Thank you for the record, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, Councilmember Johnson, you made the motion. Would you like to talk about this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I think there's been a lot of talk about it. I think we've heard there's been a lot of discussion. I think that the consensus of the council is good intent with a holistic picture in view of the economic development and advancement of all people within our city, and I'm very satisfied with it and looking forward to full support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to give some words as mayor. Keep in mind that the council went ahead and asked that the underlying comprehensive plan be modified as follows. Redraft the comprehensive plan in alignment with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Supreme Court decisions, presidential executive orders, and federal and state laws. Eliminate language that could potentially enter the city of Puyallup into litigation. Little bit of background. I did grow up in Puyallup. I've lived in the same house now 65 years. I was raised by two parents who taught me to judge a person based on the color of their skin, by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. I believe that's very appropriate that was how I was raised. I have two biracial children. I think that I have proven it out in my own life that the words that they instilled in me are ones that I've lived in my life. This underlying modification addresses constitutional concerns that have been brought up. The U.S. Supreme Court has made it very, very clear. Eliminating racial discrimination means eliminating all of it. It is universal in its application, and that was the most recent U.S. Supreme Court decision, the 2023 Students for Fair Admission versus Harvard. They went on to state that one of the principal reasons race is treated as a forbidden classification is that it demeans the dignity and worth of a person to be judged by ancestry instead of by his or her own merit and essential qualities. Now, they have followed this guidance. There was a court case that came out last week by the U.S. Supreme Court that was unanimous, that will allow people to go ahead and file reverse discrimination lawsuits. In Washington State alone, we have lawsuits for K-12 funding. We have lawsuits, this is from the federal government, Head Start, early childhood education, public transit and homeless grants, federal grant funding freeze, and I believe both Pierce and King County are involved in lawsuits. I think it's important that we address the comprehensive plan in a way that looks at people other than through a racial lens. And a lot of the modifications that we have made in this underlying ordinance are ones that came forward by people who testified, who said that in fact the use of equity and racial preferences was something that they in fact did not agree with, and I think the majority of the council agrees the same way. What we did do is we believe we enhanced the inclusivity of this. Terms like underserved and disadvantaged ensure that all residents in Puyallup who are facing hardship, regardless of race, are considered, including seniors, low-income families, immigrants, and people with disabilities. So we view as what we have done to the comprehensive plan is expand our priorities so that anyone who is underserved or disadvantaged, again, regardless of race, and there's no reason why someone in our community should get less of a service because of the color of their skin than another individual in our community. We need to all be treated the same, and that is a mantra we have used continually on the council. The second area is I really do believe this is legally sound. Race-neutral language aligns with state RCW, federal, Title VI, and then also Supreme Court decisions. I also think that it garners greater community support. I know that may not seem the case here this evening with many of those presidents present, but focusing on need rather than race builds a broader public consensus and avoids divisive identity-based classifications. In fact, I think a great example of this is the University of Michigan, who went all into the DEI movement. They now have dropped it because they found that it was more divisive. It was not bringing people together, but instead driving them apart, because all of a sudden that content of your character was no longer the primary focus, but it was instead the immutable characteristics that a person has. I hope that Puyallup is bigger than that, and Puyallup can rise above that, maybe be an example for the state of Washington. Number 4, I think that there'll be measurable outcomes. Prioritizing economic vulnerability and access disparities like housing and income allows for targeted, effective resource allocation without assuming uniform stereotyping group experiences. And the Supreme Court is very clear and adamant that you cannot stereotype people. You cannot just look at them and make assumptions about them. And finally, fairness and sustainability. If we want a fair approach and a sustainable approach, this approach avoids demographic assumptions against stereotyping and creates durable and an equal plan that considers the full spectrum of local needs. I think that there are so many positives going in this direction, and I know Washington State is going one direction, but I think that it's got to pause and realize that in the long term, that will be a detriment, and I think it will run right smack dab into the U.S. Supreme Court, who says that you cannot solve discrimination by discriminating. And I think that's a belief that we have here in Puyallup, and I would ask people to embrace that. With that, if there's no further discussion, we will go for a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, I believe that is a 5-2.
I voted nay.
Okay, then it is a 4-3. Okay, with that, we're now going to move on to the next item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is number 5, resolutions. 5A, resolution appointing Eric Johnson as a designated alternative to the Rainier Communications Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. Council, before you this evening, we do have a proposed resolution to appoint Public Affairs Officer Eric Johnson as the designated alternate to the Rainier Communications Commission. Currently, Mayor Castema is the representative for the city of Puyallup. In the event that Mayor Castema is unable to attend a meeting and a vote must occur, the city must actually designate a backup, and the proposal is for that to be our Public Affairs Officer Eric Johnson, who has attended meetings in the past for Mayor Castema, just with those that he was not able to vote at.
Okay, with that, we have a motion before us. This just requires a simple vote. Is there a motion to approve? Councilmember Adler.
Sorry, I'll go ahead and do this procedurally. So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Adler, I thought you were going to volunteer to sit on this commission.
No, I was going to apologize that I had asked earlier this year to come off of this committee due to my professional conflicts. It's a hard day and time to make, so I apologize for this domino effect, but appreciate staff, as always, coming through on behalf of council. Thank you.
Okay, with that, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Considerations and requests authorizing funding for the Puyallup Police Department's designated crisis responder program. Chief Engel, please.
Mayor Castema, members of the council, Chief Scott Engel, Puyallup Police Department. We're back before you tonight requesting funding for the Puyallup Police Department's designated crisis responder program. Council had considered this at a March meeting. At that time, we were waiting to hear from the Washington Associations of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs if we received a grant to continue the program. As City Manager Steve Kirkley has alluded to, we did not receive that grant. In the in-between time, there were 2 questions that council members asked us to research and bring before you. You should have received that memo, I believe, yesterday. One asking about the Pierce Transit Program, and secondly, our use of Pierce County Sheriff's Department designated crisis responders within the city. I can answer questions that you may have related to that memo or any other questions that you may have regarding the program. There is no formal presentation from us tonight, but we are available for questions.
Councilmember Adler.
Thank you. I'm hoping if you, Chief, or our city manager are able to walk through the funding amount and what that is covering.
On, I believe it's nearly the last page of your agenda, $390,297 will cover us for the designated crisis responder through the end of 2026.
Okay, and this, I just am crosswalking my, what I remember in my memory. So the funding ends, we extended it through June 30.
That's correct.
Okay, and so this will be July 1 through December 31, 26.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Discussion.
Councilor Whitting.
I just wanted to, I support this this motion, but I just wanted to point out that our Tier 3 funding is usually used for things that are not ongoing, but one-time events, and so I felt a little uncomfortable using these funds for this purpose, but so I'd just like to make sure that we all understand that we can't continue to rely on Tier 3 money to do this moving forward. When we go to our budget sessions in October, we're going to have to find the money to continue this program after this amount. So I just wanted to be sure everybody was aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and do a revote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, let's go ahead and move on. City Manager's report.
Just briefly, you have a meeting next Tuesday, and the main item on that will be the second reading of the ordinance pertaining to middle housing and the ADU ordinance that was before you last week. So that will be returning for second reading. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. With that, council reports. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will pass for this evening.
Councilmember Dorr. Okay. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castma. This weekend is the Meeker Days Festival. It's a 3-day come and be part of all that Puyallup has to offer. Also, we got 4 graduations happening at the Washington State Fair. And let us not forget Happy Father's Day to all the fathers in our community. Thank you, Mayor Castma.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank you for your leadership, Mayor. It was a challenging meeting. We had some points of perspective certainly were brought up, and you were fair and I think consistent in letting everyone share their perspective. I just want to take us back. I remember moving here over 30 years ago and bringing my children when they were young to go and participate in civic city council meetings when they were children. And of course, it was over in the little small police building that was over, I think, where the condos are now, or somewhere in that area. And not so much at that time, but fast forward a few more years, we had a season in council dynamics that, I think were, even by those that were involved in that, kind of a bit hostile, and some would even say toxic. And that's in no means hindering or implying anything to anyone that was on the council at that time. It was just a different dynamic. And I remember seeing some of those meetings and the dialogue that was going on here publicly in the dais was quite insulting to each other, members being insulting each other and just really looking out, trying to fight digs. And to the testament of all of us on this council, not that we're all perfect, but I think I've watched over the course of the 11, 12 years I've been on this council, under everyone's leadership, including, at the time Mayor Dorr and others that have gone before, a real effort to have civic dialogue, disagreement, but no toxic, venom. And so I just want to compliment the council for that layer of decorum and respect, and moving forward. I think it's healthy for our town to have that kind of example, even though there's disagreements, because at the end of the day, all of us have perspectives and there's a process. And once that process moves forward, we move on and we don't look at each other as enemies. And quite frankly and respectfully, I think other agencies could learn from this dialogue at a state and federal level of what looking out for the people means and letting the process take its place without seeing each other as the evil or the enemies, just different perspectives. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Whitting.
I'd just like to say how much I appreciate Councilmember Johnson's comments. We have strong opinions on things, and sometimes they differ, and the ability to get the city's work done together and have carry out the work and agree to disagree at times, but move forward on to the next issue where maybe we do agree. So I really appreciate that, but so I wanted to express that. I have one item that I'd like to call to people's attention. On Friday at 1 o'clock at the Cornforth Campbell lot, there's going to be a ribbon cutting for the Palindrome project. So that is a major economic development project for our city. It's going to be coupled with the Meeker Festival Street in due time. That the two are kind of going forward in lockstep. So I wanted to call that to folks' attention. I think it'll be a good time and a great step forward for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We, of course, have the Meeker Days Festival happening this weekend, and I'll be down there helping out, and so I am really looking forward to that. The other thing that's happening consequently on Saturday is the Bradley Lake Park Work Party from 9 to 12 in collaboration with the Conservation District. So if you're interested in that, you can go onto the city website and take a look and see how you can join that. That's going to be a good time to get out and take a look at the park and help clean it up and some of the things they have to take care of out there. Other than that, the weather that we've been having is fantastic, and I am looking forward to the rest of the week and looking forward to Meeker Days this weekend. So looking forward to collaborating with the rest of the council in the weeks ahead and getting all of the things that we need to get done across the finish line. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Appreciate those comments. I will just say that on the agenda it says that we're going to go into an executive session to review the performance of a public employee. We're going to delay that. That will not take place. So members, you are free to go. I do want to thank all of you for going through a kind of a laborious process. The public needs to know that that comprehensive plan has been worked on probably, almost a year and a half. So it's a long time that has been examined, had the opportunity to be examined, and it actually passed out of the Planning Commission, I believe it was in early December when the first version of it came out. So we've had a number of months, 6 months, to examine that and to look at various modifications. The amendments that we saw before us this evening were all online, at least since the initial amendment was passed, actually very shortly thereafter, but have been on there for a few weeks. But now we have a time to get more public opinion and more examination, and it will come back. It'll set the vision for us for the next 20 years. So I want to thank each and every one of you. Councilmember Johnson, I appreciate your salute to civility. I agree 1,000%. So with that, I wish all of you well. Thank you. The meeting's adjourned.